So in this second video, we're going to explore a little bit more about why we need compassion. So why is it important for our well-being to not only be compassionate to other people, but also to bring that compassion to ourselves? And it really helps to start to think about the world that we live in, I think. Um, so the world that we live in is very challenging and very tricky. And if you think about it, we could have two people living next door to each other, um, born into different families, leading completely different lives. So one may have, a really nice childhood, and the other might have a really, really challenging childhood with traumatic experiences. But neither child has asked or um, had any say over which childhood they've had. And the same goes as we go through life. We don't ask for the difficult experiences in our life, and sometimes we can be really unlucky in what we go through and the challenges that we face. So life can be really, really difficult. But what we do know is that although that's not your fault, it is your responsibility to help your future self by thinking about ways that you can support yourself. So it's a really key message within compassion focused therapy is it's not your fault, but it is your responsibility to support your future self. That's a really good one to maybe think about and maybe journal around and explore a little bit more. The other thing that can be really helpful to know about maybe why we find it hard to be compassionate to ourselves is thinking about how our brains have evolved. So we have wonderful brains, and they've evolved quite quickly, and it's left us with some challenges in the way that we think. So we have the old brain at the bottom of the back of the head, which is the part of the brain where we kind of have all our fight or flight responses. So where we think if we're in danger, it helps us to kick into a fight or a flight mode or a freeze or a fawn, to help us to survive. And when we're in that mode, it's very hard for us to think about anything else because our body and our brain are focused on getting us out of danger. But as humans, we've also evolved this wonderful frontal cortex at the front of our brain, which is wonderful, and it's given us imagination, the ability to think about planning in the future, and so many of our advances as a human race are thanks to the frontal cortex. But what we know is that because of the way that these two parts of the brain talk to each other, it's very easy to get stuck into loops. So one really good example is if we think about a zebra in the out just grazing, and he spots a lion. So the old brain would kick in and say, I need to get out of here, and it would run off. And then once we're saying that he managed to escape the lion, once he had escaped it, the old part of his brain would just switch off, and he could go back to grazing, no problem. So the danger, the threat's gone, so that part of the brain would switch off, and he goes back to kind of normal everyday life. Whereas if we are in a situation that feels threatening, a life-threatening situation to us, the old part of our brain goes off, and we get that fight or flight or fawn or freeze response in our body. But then if the threat goes away, we have the power now with our frontal cortex to start to think about what could have happened, what if it happens again. And our imagination can really get us stuck into loops of thinking and ways of thinking about it. So often when we're experiencing distress, we can be stuck in one of these loops where we're worrying about something that's happened in the past or something that might happen in the future. And so when we look at compassion focused therapy, it has a lot of mindfulness based activities to help to support us to move into the present moment, so that we're not kind of going round and round in these loops, which can make us, our minds and our bodies, feel quite stressed and drained. So that's a little bit about why we need to be more compassionate to ourselves. And it could be really helpful to think about, maybe go away and to journal what kind of loops that you might get stuck in, and then thinking about what would you say to a friend who is experiencing these loops. So how might you support them, or what kind of kind words would you bring to them? And then to think about how you could then bring that kindness to yourself